listening to the Knicks Recap, your source for all New York Knicks-related content.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Knicks Recap, your source for all New York Knicks-related content. I'm your host, Troy, and don't forget to hit that notification bell so you stay updated with all of our latest episodes. We have Knicks preseason basketball to talk about. We have our point guard in Jalen Brunson to talk about. We got some Julius Randle to talk about, and to help me do all of this today, you see him on screen already. I'm sure you saw him last night. MSG analyst, ESPN radio host, and also, if you saw it last season, he was on First Take a couple of times too. Who knows where we're going to see him this season? Please help me welcome Alan Hahn. What's going on, Alan? How are you doing today, man?
It's great, Troy. Good to be back with you.
Hey, man. And again, I got to say it because I always do. Han Solo in the building. I love that nickname, man. I really, really do. And before I get into the stuff about the Knicks, I just got to give some flowers to Alan Hahn. This man has been putting in the work this offseason. Every time I look up, I swear to God, I see him in another podcast, including this one now. But the thing is, he's doing the service to the fans. And one of the things, you got a little bit of hate on this too. And this is one thing I wanted to talk about. The Leon Rose interview you did, by the way, great interview. A lot of people don't understand. I find it so funny that some people thought you weren't as lavish with your question. You should have pushed on Leon a little bit more. I thought you did a phenomenal job towing that line of balance. There's something to be said about professionalism. I can come on here and ask Alan Hahn anything about his family, his life, but that's not professional. There is a professional basis to when you do interviews. And the way you handled that Leon Rose interview, it shows me why you get those interviews.
See, I appreciate you saying that. It's something that I think you're right. I don't think a lot of people understand how it does work. And to be honest, too, I have been in scrums in the preseason with a general manager, whether it's Isaiah Thomas, whether it's Donnie Walsh, as a reporter, as a beat writer, and no one's badgering anyone in those situations, right? It's easy for us to all I'm like this I'm a fan of like the Yankees or the Jets, right? So I would feel like that about Brian Cashman. Like I would want to demand answers and he's got to answer this and stuff. But when you're a reporter and you're embedded like that as a beat writer or whatever, or what I am at this point, that you just don't do that because it's disrespectful. It's unprofessional. You don't badger people unless, of course, it's something that's pretty serious and you got to get an answer. That's a different story. But when you're talking about building your team and stuff, you're not going to sit there and just start accusing him of things or saying things that are just fan base kind of takes. And as I've said this before, I'll say it one more time. The questions that were asked were questions I wanted to ask, that I would have asked in any kind of scenario I felt were important to be answered. And I thought Leon answered them. And there are some things that, like the Donovan Mitchell stuff, he can't talk about Donovan Mitchell, right, Troy? You understand?
Right, exactly.
He will get fined by the league if he talks about, oh yeah, we were trying to trade for him and we had if he does all that, he'll get fined. There's a rule about talking about a player who's the possession of another team. That's the reality. So he couldn't say much, but the fact that he answered anything from me and was willing to do it was, I thought, important. So, look, everybody's going to hate. Everybody's going to have a problem with it. I watched it back, and there were a couple of things I'm like, yeah, I probably should have followed up here, there. But in the moment, when you're recording something, and as I've said this before, too, this was shot in one take. They started rolling. We didn't cut. Not once. You can ask anybody that was there. We never cut all the way through. Those commercial breaks, that was the producer that as he's doing, he's like, well, I got to go to commercial at some point, right? You got to pay for these shows. So he had to find a place to stop. And then I voiced over more with Leon Rose coming up. But we didn't stop. We rolled the whole thing, got it done in one take, and asked every question I wanted to ask, and nothing was edited out. Not a single question I asked, they said, oh, we're not going to have that. That didn't happen. So, I did the best I could. I appreciate you saying that. for the most part, I've heard from a lot of people that just like the fact that at least he talked to someone.
Right.
And hopefully, you know what? Hopefully there's certainly more of this, because it's always good to hear from, the leading voice of the franchise.
And the thing here is, I had a couple of other guests on my show. I actually had Zach Braziller from the New York Post on my show, and I told him about that as well too. And even he said, obviously the media and Leon Rose don't get along right now, but even they agreed that the interview you did was, top notch and really stellar. And again, any fan that couldn't see the balance that's needed to do an interview like that is ridiculous. I thought from that standpoint, you nailed it 100%. And the Knicks front office may be getting that same praise later on in the season, because it seems they hit a little bit of a jackpot with Jalen Brunson. And okay, listen, first preseason game, I get it. You're going to tell me that. I get it. Listen, I understand. I know we have a couple of games left. It's not, they even start yet. Jalen Brunson played 20 minutes. I get it. But Allen, 20 minutes, 7 of 9 from the field, 5 assists, 16 points, looking like he could get in the paint whenever he wanted, shoot outside whenever he wanted, penetrate whenever he wanted. Maybe it's just me just lacking a guard and seeing Alec Burke at the position for so long that I've forgotten what it feels like to have a good guard there. But I thought Jalen Brunson could not have done better in his premier debut at MSG. What was your thoughts on Jalen Brunson?
Yeah, I agree with you. And as I said on the post-game show, I felt like he set a tone. Sometimes you look for a point guard to be a leader. Sometimes you want the point guard to be a guy that's somebody that just takes over and all that stuff. What he did was set a tone, but it was a physical tone. Like, he took charges early on. First preseason game, first quarter, it's going to look a little messy. So you saw some, air balls and a couple of really ugly looking shots. I mean, both sides really, that wasn't a pretty first quarter, but there were a couple of moments that you saw like, okay, there's a little, all right, that's different. But what also was recognizable was something that I saw a lot of Jalen last year, because I spent a lot of time covering the Western Conference playoffs for ESPN. So I saw Jalen a lot. And of course, with the back of my mind, knowing that, all the rumors were that he was going to sign with the Knicks, I paid close attention to his game, and that's what he did. It's nothing different than what you saw in Dallas. Dribble penetration, he can get into the paint against anybody. He's got a low center of gravity, strong, and that alone just makes a defense collapse because he can finish. Elfrid Payton could get in the paint. Elfrid Payton couldn't finish. That's the difference. Jalen can. So you need that help. You need to be able to suck in, and then when you do, he's got that ability to make that pass if he needs to, or to just finish that shot and create the defense to focus on him. But on the other end of the floor is where a lot of people were wondering, well, he's 6 feet, is he not that big of a guard? Are they going to take advantage of him? Right. It didn't look like, Cade Cunningham, 6'8". Did it look like Cade Cunningham took advantage of that size advantage? He didn't, like he knows, he's smart enough at this point of his career to know what he can and can't get away with defensively. But it was the taking the charge. In the preseason, the willingness to give up your body, that kind of sets a tone with your team. And that's what I liked about him, that tone setting. It's sort of like, no, this is who we're going to be. And I felt like that stood out to me early in the preseason game. And then coming out of the half, what was their biggest weakness last year? Third quarter of doom, right? They always struggled in third quarters. Those first 5 minutes where they would, if they had a lead, they blew it. If they were down, the lead got away, the deficit got away. They came out in the second half. And yes, I know it's a preseason game. I know it's the Pistons, but there's still something about a team's tone and attitude. And you saw it immediately where Brunson was like, let me get him involved, quick baskets by RJ. And you looked up and it was like almost a 30-point game. So they were 10 for 10 also. So that's what I loved about Jalen Brunson. And you also know that he and Tibbs, like, he's known him forever. That's never going to be a problem. Tibbs is tough on his point guards, but they've got a guy that can handle it because he already knows what's coming.
They called him JB Smooth in my Twitter space. And to be honest, I love every single, as soon as he touched the ball, I'm talking about the second he touched the ball, I felt different. Yes. It just felt different.
He felt in control. Yeah.
Yes, it felt, and I didn't see Randall walk the ball up. I didn't see that. And for me, that's I had my eyes on Randall a lot last night because I wanted to see how he was going to adjust this lineup. Because when you thought about this lineup with Jalen Brunson coming in, you had to let him be the point guard. So you knew he was going to get his shots, you're going to get his minutes. Who was going to get less shots or who was going to get as many shots? That's what was in my head. And the first thing I was thinking of, well, you just paid RJ 120 million or 107 million guaranteed, right? So you got to give him some shots now. Julius is paid. You still got to get him some shots. So I'm looking at this lineup now, and JB, like you said, he controlled the tone setting that he did in that game. I felt it. You can feel it. If you're a Knicks fan and you've been suffering for these last few years, and then you see how he played last night, there's a reason we're acting a little bit different for this one preseason game. It's because we haven't seen it. We've been devoid of it. Maybe Raymond Felton, maybe Alfred Payton on a good night, maybe.
Yeah, Jason Kidd, when Kidd was running the point, he could get guys into spots and set them up, and you could just recognize. It's the one thing I love about New York, because I do think, people call us also, we're so arrogant about our basketball knowledge, but I do think there is a savvy to a New York basketball fan, because we know what we're looking at. The problem is that a lot of times with our home teams, we're not looking at what we want to see, right? But we know what we see when we see it. And good point guard play when you see it. And it's not like he did anything dynamic, but what he did was what you would expect. And it sounds so simple, but like you said, you haven't had that element in so long. You've had, asking Randall to play point forward a lot of times. We were looking at it like, that doesn't look right. Like, that doesn't look right. But he's got to do it because they don't really have a true point guard. There's just certain things you just know that doesn't look right. And then there's things when you see it, you're like, that's how you're supposed to do it. Kid was doing it. Yes, Ray Felton was doing it as well. I loved Ray.
Yeah.
Obviously when Steph was here and it didn't go great for Marbury, but he was a scorer. So you played around him on that level. But I mean, I go back to Derek Harper. Harper would get guys organized. All right, I got to get big fella some shots. I got to get, Oak's getting a little grumbly. I got to get him some shot. Like, there's always, that you just knew got to take care of some people. It looks right. And that's the best way I could put it. You saw Brunson, and from the tip off, it just looked right. And now you want to see that continue now for the rest of the season, and just maybe offense won't be such a struggle this year like it was last year. That you won't have to create your own shot. They were last in the league, Troy, in assists per game. Last in the league. In a game that has become so much about passing and so less about ISO, the Knicks had no choice but to go ISO because they just didn't have an organizer. They do now.
And one of the things that we were just talking about regards to getting shots, right? Because who was going to get shots, who was going to lose shots. The one thing that I saw was Evan Fournier. He didn't play a lot. I get it. I didn't expect him to play a lot. He's a little sore, came back from EuroLeague, played his
he played all summer.
There. Right. Yeah. So I expected him not to get a lot of burn. So I'm not taking a lot of that one game where we don't know what's really happened. But I will say this. He wasn't really utilized a lot because Brunson was looking for Randall. He was looking for RJ. Mitch was getting some burn. So in my head, I'm thinking, okay, so Fournier's best asset, one of his best assets, is his shooting.
Yep.
If he's not shooting, then in my head, I'm thinking, okay, so what is he giving you at that position then? Because we already have an undersized backcourt. Jalen Brunson, for all, he's, whatever you want to call him, diminutive in size, he's undersized, whatever. You saw last night that he doesn't mind getting physical. And from your guard, that's what, at least if he's short, the least you want him to do is play with that focus and determination, that grit, and he has it. Another person who has it on the team is Quentin Grimes, I would think. A lot of fans have been saying, can we put Quentin Grimes in there, especially from last night, if you're just looking at that one game as a sample size. And again, it's a one-game sample size.
Yeah.
But, if Fournier is not going to get the same type of shots as he was last season, and his shooting is not going to be as, sought after in that starting lineup as it was last season, then maybe it is an argument that you start Grimes there, because at least he can give you the defense, and he's not a bad shooter either.
Yeah, he and Fournier actually were pretty much on the same level as three-point shooters, so both about 39% in the first half of last season. Unfair, really, to compare the second half because he only played 7 games after he had the injury. So I did the first half comparisons. They both shot about 39%. Obviously, Grimes is a better defender. He's a bigger, stronger defender as well. can handle the ball. He's not the offensive threat, though, that Fournier is. I mean, to be fair to Evan Fournier, he is an offensive threat who can create his own shot and knock down the three. And the big moments, like, he doesn't shrink in a big moment. You know, Fournier is a big moment kind of player. He's played in huge games. When you think about it, with France, like, they have played in monstrous games. They played in gold medal games constantly. They're always playing big time, high pressure games. And so he thrives in that. But I made that like a month ago, and I'm not trying to be like, I'm the first one to say it, right? But I'm going to say I'm the first one to say it because I did it in August when nobody was talking about it. But
I'll give it to you.
But everybody else, you know, has also mentioned it as well. I felt like it made sense to have Grimes especially if you weren't going to trade him. If you didn't want to trade him for Donovan Mitchell, if that was one of the pieces that you're like, no, we're not trading him. If he's that valuable to you, then why isn't he starting? Why shouldn't he start between Brunson and Barrett? Because of all the reasons we just gave. He can shoot the three, he can defend, he can get up the floor. I have said that, and I thought, you know, okay, if he means that much to you, show me by putting him in the lineup. And then Tibbs shot it down. He just shot it down. He referenced all kinds of things, including numbers and whatever. And when he shot it down, I kind of said, all right, let me consider why he's shooting this down. And it's amazing today that when you just stop, and if someone disagrees with you, if you take a moment and say, well, let me understand why you disagree with what I just said, like, now, what, I just surrendered? No, I didn't surrender. I'm just listening, which we all need to learn how to do, right? Like, all right, you might disagree, but listen to me. So I wanted to listen to Tibbs' explanation of it and consider it and say, all right, I understand where he's going with that. And the other part of it that everybody keeps forgetting, that I try to remind people all the time, is how often did Evan Fournier finish games? Not much.
No. Yeah, he would ride the
He
bench
hardly
a lot.
He didn't finish a lot of games. So then I'm like, and Tibbs has said this many times, starters, you know, yeah, a lot of times that's, you know, that's respect. Finishing the game is what matters. That's the group that I trust. Because in the last 5 minutes, I need guys I trust out there that I know will defend, that I know can make shots. Maybe the last 5 is what we should be watching, you know, in the first couple of games this season. Once, of course, Grimes gets healthy. It doesn't help that he's not healthy right now.
Right.
But that's what I was thinking, is once I heard him say that, and then I started thinking to myself, let me watch how he finishes games, and then I can judge whether or not. Because Fournier's a vet. He's been in the league a long time. He's a well-known, established, you know, he's got street cred on the international game. It could be a little more of like, let's give him the respect as a starter. But when it comes down to winning time, you know, maybe we'll see a lineup that includes Grimes, because Tibbs has made it clear he loves Grimes. That's why Donovan Mitchell's not here.
Right.
He is one of the reasons, not the only, but one of the main reasons why Donovan Mitchell's not a Knick is because of how much they felt Quentin Grimes was a player that fit here. And so with that in mind, it's not like I think Tibbs doesn't like Grimes, doesn't want to play him. No, it's not that. I think he just says, you don't do that to a guy like Fournier, at least until, you know, let him lose the job while the season goes on. But to finish the game, that's what I want to watch. Does he have him finish games? So we you know, again, we'll see. But I did that, and everybody's just like, oh, you're defending Tibbs. And I just found that so weird. Like, I'm not defending him, but God forbid I just consider someone's opinion.
See, the problem
and it happens to be the head coach, who's a 2-time coach of the year. I probably should listen to his reasoning. You know what I mean? So
it's perspective, Alan. I think that's the hardest part. It's like being able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and be able to understand that side of it. So that way you don't have to hate on something. That is a skill, though. It's not a skill that a lot of people possess, but it is a skill to be able to say, all right, well, I listen to what you got to say. I may not like it. I may disagree with it, but I can still understand it from a basis of, okay, you know, basketball, you're considering shooting versus anything else. You figured that the other positions are going to give you that defense. You need a shooter, you need spacing. Yeah. Okay, I get it. So that
and it's also the chemistry too. Keep in mind, you know, one of the things that he described when talking about it is he talked about one of the things the Knicks haven't had in years is consistency with lineups. They haven't had consistency from year to year with players. So you have like 2 years now of all right, And Randall, while he missed Reggie Bullock early last season, by the end of last season, Evan was one of his favorite people. He loved Evan Fournier. In fact, he's talked about it even like off court, how, oh, Evan's my guy. That's my guy. I love him. Like, so, that kind of consistency, I think, is very important. And when you start a season, you kind of want that. So Tibbs was pointing to different reasons. And while I still am skeptical and I still think in time it's going to end up going the way I think it should go, I also can understand why he wouldn't want to completely disrupt the lineup, which, we haven't had much of that consistency with groups over the last couple of years. So I'll let this play out. I called it 20 games. That's the first quarter of the season. I 20 games. Let me look at the numbers, and then we can decide if this is working or we were right. You should make the change.
For anything it's worth, I also 100% agree. I think Grimes just fits better within the backcourt with a Jalen Brunson. I hope Tibbs does make the adjustment. I think that's another argument going into the season is Tibbs' willingness to adjust to different players depending on who they're playing, different lineups, maybe trying a Hartenstein instead of a Mitch and starting a lineup sometimes, maybe if you're playing the Bucks or whatnot, if they have a more dynamic type of big. I'm not saying I don't think that's gonna happen because I think he likes his set starters, set bench. I get that. And I think any fans is hoping for that. You might not get that much, but something that he has done, and he did try, and I was glad to see, although I didn't see a lot of it, unfortunately, Cam Reddish. I mean, that's the number, probably the name right behind Grimes in this offseason that I've heard the most is Cam Reddish. And I said it even before the preseason started when I heard Fournier was a little sore, so I figured he wasn't going to play that much. And I knew that, I saw Grimes in the walking boots. So I figured, with the left knee soreness and the right foot soreness, nothing was going to happen with him, right? So I wanted to see what Cam was going to do because that was his opportunity. This was his time to make or break it. He had to show me something. 11 minutes, 1 3-pointer.
Yeah, 1 for 7.
And then a great, give and take with RJ, which, gave me so much joy. And it was all taken away in 11 minutes later when, he had that ankle scare. I heard it wasn't anything serious. He wanted to come back in the game from what I was told, but he didn't obviously didn't want to risk it with, being preseason. So hopefully he'll get another chance next game. But I think he has to do something with these minutes because if he doesn't do anything with these minutes and he's already limited right now in preseason and Grimes is not playing, I can only imagine what happens when Grimes comes back and they're playing regular season games.
Yeah, that's again all excellent points. If you watch too, once the injury happened, we put that on the post-game show, and you could see he actually stepped on the foot of a referee running down the floor. He was trying to go wide into the corner, which is what you're supposed to do on fast breaks. Always somebody has to fill, and it all depends on where you are on the floor. Some go down the middle as you kind of just crash, and then there's others that have to just go wide and kind of be that stretch, the option out in the corner 3. And he was going to the corner and he just happened to, hit the foot and twisted that ankle. It wasn't, it was pretty rough. And the first thing he did when the whistle blew was he wouldn't look at the bench and he kind of waved like, no, I'm fine. Because he knows everything you just said. He knows I need these minutes. I can't come out now. I can't have an injury now. Grimes is out. This is my chance. And so he kind of waved it, but then they took him out because they have been saying that they are overcautious on every injury in preseason. They're not going to let you play through it. They want you to get healthy because obviously it's a grind. They're in the regular season. They want everybody as healthy as possible. So they took him out. Now we'll see. I didn't see any word today about it, but if he's waving it off, he's probably trying to stay in the game, which makes you think maybe it's not so bad. You hope it isn't, because this was an opportunity for him to try to figure out a way to carve a niche. Those first 3 minutes that he came in the game, hits the shot, looked very smooth, and then the break, and then he hands it off for the finish. And those were things that I'm like, all right, good. And I actually was saying to Wally Zerbiak, who was standing next to me while we were watching there, we were in the tunnel right by the visitors bench, and I was saying, you know what? I was like, yeah, that's it. Make him play you. That's what I kept saying. Make him play you. Make them play you. And it looked like that was his intention. And then he just started missing a bunch of shots, which everybody was missing shots early. It's preseason. Right. That's what I was frustrated with the injury, because it was kind of a good chance for him to show how much work he's put in this offseason, how much more dedicated he is on the defensive end. And if he can kind of give his coach a reason, like look him in the eye and say, see, you got to play me. Look what I can do out here. And unfortunately, that only lasted about 11 minutes. So we'll see. We'll see if it isn't a serious injury, and you hope he's going to get more opportunity in the preseason, because he's a guy that definitely needs as much minutes as he can now to see if he can get into the rotation later.
Yeah, I think Cam has all of the talent in the world. He just has to stay healthy, man. That's the story.
Always.
That's just been the story of his, career, just injuries, and it's unfortunate for somebody who has all that talent, drafted where he was, he had that explosive, Atlanta playoff series, right, where he was going off. So, I mean, everybody thought they were getting a significant piece. And a lot of times during the offseason, the Lakers made it seem like, because it was rumors that that the Lakers were interested, the Lakers made it seem like he was a significant piece. So, it does seem like the value was there. I think I don't want to base one game on Cam Reddish. He's more than 11 minutes. And I want to see what he can give me beyond that. But even in the 11 minutes that he did come in, besides those two little plays, he did run into the, a couple of defenses that are already set. Got his shot, swatted away. Just because he wasn't, looking. I think he was looking around when he was going in, so he didn't really know what he was doing when he was going into the paint. So just a couple of things that I'm noticing there. And it's, again, preseason, again. But I want to just jump away from Reddish and go into another Polar fan player in Randall, really. I want to see what the fans are going to do to him. And thankfully, actually, the fans were nice.
Welcoming.
I didn't hear it. Right. I mean, I didn't hear anything too bad for Randall.
No.
I do want to say, personally, for me, and a lot of my cohorts don't agree with me, but I felt like he looked a little lost in the first half. He turned it on a little bit more in the second half, and I think in the second quarter he was getting a little bit more consistent. But that first quarter looked a little bit out of place. I didn't think he knew what he was doing a couple of times when he was catching the ball, kind of just stepping, and then looking like he was going to shoot and then passing. So just a lot of the other Randall stuff I saw. I did see a little bit of ISO Randall in the third as well, which I didn't like too much. But I get it. Sometimes he's probably going to be your best player on the floor. Sometimes at that position, depending on the switch, he might have to do that. So I get the need to try to practice that. But I liked that he played off the ball a lot. And if you noticed, when he shot a free throw, he made the free throw in. He rushed back on defense. He ran.
And that's something that Tibbs has talked to him about. It's his motor.
Yeah.
Because Tibbs has said one of his best attributes is when he plays in the fast break game, when he gets out on the floor, he's so athletic, he's so strong. That he can finish against anyone in those scenarios, and he tries to get him to do more of that. So I think that's something they're trying to they're just trying to make that a muscle memory thing instead of something that they have to implore him to do. First quarter, like I said, was kind of a mess for everyone. A couple of his shots weren't even close. They were bad. And at first I wondered, is this a Garden thing? Is he, I'm back at the scene of the crime, and how are they going to greet me? And my first shot, I'm nervous because there were some groans. Again, I was in the building. Some of those misses, there were groans. It wasn't boos. It was just one of those like that was bad. Oh my God, that shot was ugly.
Right.
But it's all about settling in. And once he settled in, he was much better, and he finished with some nice numbers. I mean, again, he fills everybody. It's 16 points. What is it? 5 rebounds. 4 assists, that's what he does. And he didn't play a ton of minutes either. So for Randall, it's got to be for him to just settle down and play in the flow. Is he going to have some ISO moments? Yes. Why? Because he's really good at ISO. If you get him one-on-one, he's really good. It's when the double comes that we all know that's when the problem starts. He's got to recognize that. He's got to speed up a little bit so he's not grinding a possession. It's the one thing I noticed with Brunson out there, and also with RJ. Those possessions were moving. Like they were not stagnant possessions. That was also very good to see. But I just feel like Randall, and I don't know, man, I'm sure they've talked to him. He's got to get out of his head that he's got to put up numbers and to make everybody like him. What he has to understand is you already got the contract, dude. You got the contract.
Right.
The only thing now people are going to judge you on is if the team wins or not. That's it. Nobody's going to judge you if you're averaging 17 points a game. Nobody's going to be like, oh, wow, that's one of his. He hasn't averaged this low. And, he's normally a 20-10-5 guy. Like, what is he doing? Nobody's going to say a word if the team's winning. They're going to say, wow, he is learning how to play and let other people cook too and not feel like I got to blow up the play. Like they will be happy with him. It's when he blows up offense, it blows up sets and shoots a low percentage and grinds the ball and doesn't hustle back on defense. That's when the criticism comes. So I'm willing to give him that benefit of the doubt that go into this season and be confident in RJ, be confident in Brunson, be confident in Fournier, and let it all just happen in the flow rather than forcing it, and just be happy. Like, it's amazing to say that, right? Like you got everything going for you, man. Don't be so miserable. Enjoy life, enjoy playing. And, if things aren't going well for you, do the little things and let someone else cook. And no one's going to say a word about you if RJ's averaging 23 a game and you're averaging 17 a game and your team is winning. No one's going to say a word. Not a bad word anyway.
A lot of people actually want to see that, to be honest. And I think he was the third leading scorer on the team yesterday. RJ was first at 21.
Yep, yes,
Brunson
he was.
right after, and then Randall.
18. Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, if Knicks fans saw that exact same stretch every single game, nobody would complain. If they won, nobody would complain.
Now, again, night by night, it's also by matchups, right? Like there's certain games that it's going to be his night because you're going to eat them alive. Like there's certain teams that it's like, nah, we're going to you tonight. That's the best thing is that when you have a more versatile lineup that you're not just relying on one guy.
Yeah.
It's so much easier because night to night, it's someone else's chance to be the focal point. And all you've got to do is support. And I think that's important. Look, when you're trying to get a contract, you're always worried about your numbers. That's a reality, man. Yeah. Like every player will act like they aren't. Oh, no, I'm not thinking about my contract. Everybody's thinking about their contract. It's human nature. But once you get it, the only thing you're judged on after that are dubs. Nothing else. That's it. And if you're part of winning, you're worth the money.
It's funny you said yesterday, and I want to quote this because it was such a great line. Results are all that matter.
Yep.
To the NBA, and wins actually matter. They mean something.
Oh yeah.
And for this Knicks team to win a preseason game, 96 to 117, that's still a game that we won. We can say that we won that game with a controlled pace. It wasn't. I thought for a preseason game, by the way, that was a lot more control because I've seen preseason games where for about a quarter and a half, they couldn't find the basket or the ball. So, I mean, I think we've all seen, games like that. One of the things for me, though, and I was very, very worried, Alan. I don't know if you were, but I was very worried in the first quarter when I saw RJ got off to almost a no start. He didn't do almost anything in that first until Cam came in, basically. And then it seems like Cam Reddish basically – yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say what I also noticed was when they went to the bench, but RJ stayed in. I love when RJ plays with the bench because that allows the game to go up tempo.
Yeah.
So what you had was Barrett out there and Obi out there, and like that suddenly turned into a track meet, and then you saw like easier baskets start to happen. And Barrett also seems more empowered when the bench guys come in. It's like, all right, I'm the man now. Because Randall's still more, even though it's RJ Barrett, Randall's still more established than him. Brunson's, a veteran as well. Like there's just something, even Fournier, like it's probably something he'll never get over, that little brother syndrome, right? Like this just happens when you come in the league at 19 years old, and these same guys are still around me. So, but I saw it a little bit last year, especially late in the season, and I saw it last night as well. He's he just kind of like, my chest comes out a little bit. I get a little more like, this is my crew. Like I'm going to run this. And their tempo, they sped up, and it made the game a little bit easier for some guys. And I thought RJ was phenomenal in the, again, Randall was great in the third quarter. He hit 4 of 4.
Right.
And RJ was very good in the third quarter as well. Came out and, that's when he got his buckets. So, Friday will be interesting. It'll be interesting Friday now to see, okay, you got kind of the cobwebs out and the rust off and all the other cliches.
Yeah.
Friday should be a little bit more of a first half kind of game. I think second half, these middle two preseason games, you'll probably see a lot more of everybody else. But first half's always the most important half. First quarter as well. Get off to the start, set your tone, and then you can relax a little because you just don't want to go full throttle in the preseason.
It's funny. When I looked up, I felt like I saw RJ at 21. I felt like I looked up once. He had like 3 or 4 points, 5 points.
Yeah.
Looked up again. He had 21.
Yeah.
He did it sneaky, like quiet.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's
Only two free
that,
throws. Only two
right.
free throws. Yeah.
Right. And that for me, that is so important because if he's
Yep.
doing that quietly in a preseason night, dropping 21 with Jalen
Mhm.
Brunson dancing like he was, could you imagine giving him a couple more minutes, more burn time with Jalen Brunson, watching that flow go together? RJ Barrett, and last time we talked, I think I'm very, very good at calling it like I see it with a lot of players.
Mhm.
But I love RJ Barrett. I've always loved RJ Barrett. Even with you, I think I was really high on him the last time we talked.
Mhm.
And I think last time I said he was knocking on the door of the All-Star game, right? I think this year he has a case. If he plays well and this Brunson thing works, he could make a case to bust that door open.
He could, yeah. The team has to win. You know how it works
Agreed.
with making the All-Star game. It's all about your wins, not just your stats, but what's your team doing.
Yeah.
That's important. So you're contributing to winning. But it certainly is there for him. He wants that. He wants that recognition. And I've called him from day one. I've called him a foundational piece. I just think that's what he is, because while he's not superstar level talent, meaning, something dynamic about him. Ja Morant is dynamic. Zion's dynamic. These guys that are in his draft class. But Barrett has something that to me is a foundational thing that when you're trying to build a winning program, guys like him help you get there faster. And that's character, toughness, dedication, understanding. He's mature beyond his years. He just carries himself in a way that you just see like, all right, this guy's a classy guy. Like you just see it. He's a kid, but he's not a kid, And
Absolutely.
I think that stuff's really important. So there's a lot of, and people are going to jump on this, but there's a lot of Dwayne Wade in him. And what I mean is not necessarily the same exact game, but a very similar type of game and a similar type of personality. Dwayne Wade was always very comfortable. Like Dwayne Wade has never looked awkward in his life on a basketball court, right? Like he always looked like he belonged, but no one really knew early on what he could be or how good he could be. He came in the league and he just started to show it. And that's when Shaq recognized it in him and said, no, that's the guy.
Yeah.
And I think Barrett has got that. And he's trying to remember, Wade came in a little bit older. So he's trying to figure that part out and how to do it without overstepping some things with some vets that are older than you that have been around more. It's going to be a very interesting thing to see how RJ establishes himself on the team as a guy that'll no longer defer, no longer kind of take a step back or as a back seat to other people. And that's going to be important to see. I think Brunson will empower him. It's very important for Julius to empower RJ and let him ascend a little bit. You know what? Yeah. Come up here, come upstairs into the, into this level. You're on the suite level now with us. You're allowed in the room. That's a very important place for a player to get to when he's been coming up on the team with this, again, with a guy like Randall, who he hasn't been his equal. Julius has to accept him as his equal because it could let RJ blossom.
I was going to say, you made a good point. The reason he does so well with that second unit or players that haven't been here as long or maybe a little bit younger, because he feels that leadership, that leader role.
Yeah.
And he can obviously become that leader. We've seen him do that in strides, and players do go to him. You've seen the young guys go to him quickly. Toppin, they trust in him and they believe it. And Toppin's the older guy and still obviously trusts in RJ, who's 22, younger, but it's been in the league a little bit longer. So it shows that experience does matter, and playing matters, and his ability to score and his ability to be that dominant, what we think he could be, a wing, and we need a good dominant shooting wing, and he could become that. If he ups that 3-point percentage, but I think he can improve. I think you guys said it on the show last night, around 45% overall shooting ability. If he can get that up to there this season and finish better at the rack, I can't see why he can't.
That's the key. He can get the 45% if he just finishes better around the rim. That's going to be important for him because the 3-point shot for him, same as Wade. Wade wasn't a great 3-point shooter, but he made them when it mattered. Yeah. And he's enough of a threat that you had to worry, but he wasn't a great 3-point shooter. But what Wade did is finish at the rim. He could finish better than anybody. And I think for RJ, that's a big deal this year. When you get in the paint, you got to finish. And he struggled last year to finish a lot of times because he could get to the paint. He could get to the rim whenever he wanted.
Yeah.
The finish was the hard part. So he's got to get there. I'll tell you what, too. I'll make a hockey reference. He's a guy I see wearing the C on his jersey one day. Like that, I think, is something that, captain isn't a big deal in the NBA. You don't really hear a lot about it, but he's that kind of player that at some point he's your captain. And these are the years you start to develop that that presence of the leader, the voice, the face, and all that stuff. And I think, I think he's on his way to that. This is a huge season for him. It's an exciting one too. Contracts in the pocket. Nothing else going on that he has to worry about. Now he just has to buckle down and be the player that he knows he can be.
So with all that being said, and I've asked a couple of fans this because I want to know, because every single time this happens, every single preseason, I think I do this. You have you going into the season, ESPN does it too. We have a list, a ranking of what we think the Knicks are going to win, whatever the case would be. Adam around 43 and 45 wins this year. Maybe it could go a little bit less. There might be they're likely looking at a play-in team. East is just too stacked to begin with. Although there is a huge opportunity right now because injuries are just apparent right now. Our Celtics are injured. Robert Williams is out. Udoka's gone. Bulls are without Lonzo for God knows how long. I mean, there are injuries throughout some of the Eastern Conference. We don't know what the Nets are going to have yet. The Nets looked okay, I guess, when they were playing a couple of days ago. I liked a couple of things I saw from Ben Simmons, but we don't know how that team's going to gel. We don't know what we're going to get from Kyrie. So there are a lot of open slots there, and opportunity is there. And if the Knicks can figure it out, they could potentially make a run. But if we're talking about now after what you saw yesterday, are you changing at all what you believe their win total for this year is going to be?
No, it's one preseason game. I mean, I think I still look at the roster and, depth is their strength.
Yeah.
They don't have the one dynamic player that you need. A lot of the best teams have that. Kevin Durant. I mean, the Nets have three of them. They're really two. The Celtics have Jason Tatum. Like, you understand, like everybody's got, you got Harden, you got Embiid on one team. That's the kind of thing you're trying to compete with. And they don't have that. So with that in mind, depth is going to be your strength. You've got to be a Toronto Raptors kind of team. That's what you got to be. They don't have a superstar. They've got really good players. They're well coached. They have some depth. And they just keep coming at you. They're prepared every game. You have to be that. And if you can be that, you can be in that 7-8, argument. You can be in that 6-7-8 block, especially if injuries take its toll on a team, whether it's, again, you mentioned, Robert Williams hurt, and that affects their defense in Boston. No Gallinari. They thought that was going to be a huge addition for their bench. So you take him out of the equation. That's another piece they were missing. I mean, you have you mentioned Lonzo Ball, who, if you look at their splits, him on the floor versus him not on the floor, big difference. I mean, they won when he played, and they were under 500 when he didn't. So they need him. That's a big piece as well. And then there's the surprise stuff. Didn't know that was going to happen. Didn't know this player was going to get hurt. Didn't know a player was going to play as well. Who knew that this player was going to take that next step and become an all-star? We didn't see that coming. So there's all that stuff. Atlanta, and what are you going to get out of Trae Young and Dejounte Murray? Is that going to work, or is it not going to work? Are you going to get Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland? Are they going to play well together? Are they going to get exploited defensively? Is it all going to mesh? It's all questions that need to be answered. So Absolutely. Health is critical, and obviously continuity. Two of the most important things. And so for the Knicks, it's just staying right there and then seeing at some point in the middle of the season when something always happens. Are you in striking distance to take advantage of it? So, it was promising what you saw last night. There's still a lot to figure out. I'm going to go, I think the latest I saw from Vegas was 38.5, I think, was the over-under that I saw set.
Yeah, I think so.
And I'll take the over, but I'm going to be very modest with it because I just feel like 41 and 41 is about right. Not based on they're not good, they're an average team. It's just like you said, there's just a lot of good teams in the East. And if I can name, 8 to 9 rosters that are just better than this roster,
yeah,
it's just reality. So you're sitting at probably 10 and hoping that, you could take advantage of things and be better than that. But I'm just, being modest. That's where I am right now.
So one thing before we let you go here, Alan, is the Pacer game coming up this Friday. That's going to be at 7:30, obviously. Now, we're going to see Tyrese Halliburton. We're going to see Miles Turner, who's given Mitchell Robinson problems a couple of times as they played, obviously, because, stretch fives always give other centers problems, of course.
True.
I actually want to see what happens with Isaiah Hartenstein on him. I think that's going to be something that we're going to see. It's going to be interesting to look at that. But, what are you I think you mentioned a little bit of what you're expecting in terms of lineups and who's going to play in terms of first half and second half. But what do you want to see from the Knicks going into this next preseason game that you haven't seen from them in yesterday's game?
I mean, I just think more of the same. I just want to see more of the evolution of the offense, and let's see if against a different team now that you can still get that same idea of the motion in the offense, the movement, running the floor, getting easy baskets, that kind of stuff. I just want to see the consistency of, okay, this is the same thing I saw against Detroit. If that's what I see, that's good. There's still, they're obviously going to be adding things and building things, and there's sets that they're not going to use in the preseason that, they'll throw them at you in the regular season. But it's more of that. It just, what I saw, it's always that, all right, do I trust what I saw in the first game? I can trust it more if I see it again in the second game. But I would remind people, the Knicks were 4-0 in the preseason last year, and they won their season opener in triple overtime over the Celtics, who went to the finals this year. There was a moment where 7th Avenue was flooded with fans who were yelling bing bong and were thinking they're going to the conference finals, right? So, everything is with a grain of salt. You see it, you're like, I like it, that's good. Yeah. But really, we won't know much. I always give it that. Give me 10 games into the regular season before I can really get a feel for what this team is. 20 games before I know what do I need to fix and what am I happy with.
So I'm looking the same. Consistency is what I'm hoping to see because, again, we've not had that. I want to see the defense, obviously. I want to see how they do on closeouts with the three. I think if you wanted to nitpick at anything yesterday, it's just how they defended the three in the first half.
Yeah,
I mean that's how really the Pistons really got back into it. They just kept shooting. But if you were able to close that up a little bit, which I think they will do in the regular season, Tom Thibodeau will assure that they do that, I think.
Yeah, they work on in the paint out. So they start with let's make sure we get it right in the paint, and then we'll work on how we then close out on the outside. But in the paint is the first priority on the defense as they're building it.
Right, exactly. And again, if I see a little bit more of that, I want to see a lot more. Well, not a lot more, but I want to see a little bit more from Randall. Same thing from Barrett, and of course, I gotta see more from JB Smooth.
I love it. JB Smooth. I might steal that Friday night.
Oh, if you do, you got to give credit.
I might steal that.
But I don't want to keep Alan too long. He's given us a lot of content already. Plus, if you haven't listened to this show, I guarantee if you scroll YouTube, you'll see a couple of more podcasts with him on it, and you'll listen to those shows. You'll get even more content because he's everywhere. And he's going to be on ESPN, obviously, this season, too. You'll catch him there, catch him on Twitter, catch him on MSG this Friday as well, too. One of the best guests that we've had and also a friend of the show, Alan Hahn Solo. Thank you again for coming on, bro.
Sure, I appreciate you, man.
Have a good one, man. Thank you.
All
and
right.
For fans, keep it going. Keep liking, subscribing, and following us. Until next time, Knicks fans. Peace.
Listen to new episodes of The Knicks Recap, streaming every Friday.